My name is John O'Kelly. I'm a luxury travel journalist, and I'm also the founder of a consultancy copywriting and branding agency called Lute, and Lute stands for the Luxury Travel Edit. And I was motivated to start a series of webinars because a lot of my colleagues and people in the industry were getting in touch just when the pandemic took hold, when lockdown took hold, to share their despair, their concern about what's going to happen to our industry, and to try and formulate plans that we can get through it. So the purpose of these webinars is to look at very specific topics that deal directly with the needs of the luxury travel sector specifically, because I know a lot of topics are more general, and to try and come up with practical solutions with how we can support each other and come up with ideas to benefit the entire community and industry as things go forward. I've done a number of topics. I'm specifically personally very interested in this one regarding spa and wellness. You know, speaking as someone who was unexpectedly made single directly before lockdown took hold, I've become a little bit more aware than I perhaps intended, you know, of the fundamental need we all have for touch, you know, how nourishing that can be for us. I know so many people are having conversations about desperately longing to hug their friends again, you know, that proximity and tactility that's so valuable to us. Conversely, we're also having conversations about stranger danger, contamination, social distancing. I was wondering how we can reconcile this dichotomy where we're desperate to be close to each other again, which would lead me to believe that the spa and wellness industry is going to have a surge in demand when we get out of this, versus the fact that we're now entering this room where we need to be averse to being close to people and maybe have a suspicion the way we didn't have before. So I'm going to try and reconcile that contradiction over the course of this conversation. I'll just ask firstly that the panel introduce themselves, and then we can get started. Okay, Nils, maybe if you can introduce yourself.
Of course, my name is Nils Behrens. I'm the CMO of the Lanserhof group. So Lanserhof is a group of health resorts and clinics. And at the moment we have 4 sites. So one is in London, in Mayfair. It's our newest baby. We have a cooperation there with the Arts Club, and it's purely for outpatients, and it's also a membership club. So both you can be there, come as for the medical services, and you also can become a member. The original one is from Austria. It is a resort close to Innsbruck, so really nice in the Alps. And we have another one in Bavaria and another one in Hamburg, where I'm based. And
it's beautiful, yeah.
Yeah, it's really not far away. It's really just here. So it's really close by from this picture. And our USP is at the end that we are combining high-end diagnostics with natural healing methods. So we are really medical driven. So we are not a typical wellness offer. It's more something which is a medispas, you would say it in your terms. And yeah, we are now on the market for more than 35 years. And the expansion started with me almost 10 years ago.
Great. I should say I've actually been in treatment at your facility myself and came back chewing a lot more slowly, because I know that's one of the tenets of the Lanserhof philosophy, is to rectify our approach to food and just improve our digestion. And it worked for me. Frances, can we hear a little bit about what you do?
Sure. I'm Frances Geoghegan. I set up Healing Holidays about 14 years ago, and we major on wellness and well-being. So we're different from other companies in that medical spas are something that we are very actively involved with. It's a big part of our market. So we work with the wonderful Nils and his properties at Lanserhof, and indeed Clinic La Prairie. So the key medical clinics across the world we also work with. We have found that wellness has just grown hugely over the last 10 years, and it continues to grow. There's a massive demand for it, but we only sell wellness. So all my staff are very, very knowledgeable on their subject, and we travel and see them, and we're on top of our game when it comes to what's great and what's new.
I just can underline this because Frances is our only third-party partner we have in the world. So we are only having direct sales, and only Frances is our partner because she's so professional and she really understands what our product is. We had made some bad experience with other partners because they don't understand really what we are offering, and so we had a lot of, I would just say, we are not matching with the expectation from our guests, and so I just want to underline that Frances is a real professional.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I would underline that also.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, because getting healing holidays or getting on the radar of healing holidays is a pretty awesome deal. It's a pretty big deal.
Thank you very much, wonderful gentlemen.
That's
such a nice thing to hear.
I was just going to say, I really appreciate Nils' German candor about the limitations encountered in other companies before recommending healing holidays. And Nigel, can we hear a little bit about you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, John, sorry to hear that you were made unexpectedly single.
It's fine now.
You've got at least three virtual hugs here. My name's Nigel Franklyn. I am the founder of the Spa Whisperer and co-founder of Moss Wellness Consultancy, and also co-founder of Moss of the Isles, which is a spa product. I develop, build, design, and develop wellness concepts and medical wellness concepts also. And it's something I've been doing for the last 20 or something years. I started out as a therapist, and I started out as a journalist, actually, John, and moved into therapy. And the kind of trajectory of my career has always stemmed from this kind of need to create spaces of transformation, but that's overused these days, but specifically surrender and healing. So I'm always kind of driven by this need to create innovative, purposeful wellness concepts.
Great. Well, in determining the panel, I've really appreciated the synergy between you, but also that you all have different perspectives on this. And as I said in the introduction, I'm just genuinely confused about the state of play now, people's mentality as we approach the alleviation of lockdown and again, traveling around the world in pursuit of well-being. So Francis, you've got a good perspective in that you have clients, a very active consumer base, but additionally deal with so many different brands worldwide. And can you give us an overview of what your clients are saying now, if they're feeling ready to travel again, excited about taking care of their wellness, and what changes are your partners, the products, making to facilitate their new desires if they do have different expectations now?
Well, the good thing is that, clients really do want to travel and they really do want to go to spas. We're waiting really for the government in the UK to make quarantine something that's just not going to have to happen, because that obviously changes a lot of things. But assuming that that's lifted and that clients are allowed easy access to various countries, Europe will definitely be the strong area of wellness for the foreseeable, because the perception is it's easy to get there, it's not long of a flight. And, looking at places like Lanserhof and the Lanserhof brand, in people's mind, it's easy to see that they're going to be very prepared. It's the ultimate in forward, sophisticated diagnostic. So people think, Shaw, Lanserhof, Bad Ragaz, Villa Stephanie, Clinic La Prairie, we're fine to go there because we know that they're going to get their COVID policy totally on the money. We know that. We have no concerns about that.
Well,
I think that...
So I was going to say, Anna, or Francis, I would have this perception as well, because if I am to enter a medispa environment, I'm really anticipating that I'll encounter people in white coats. I'm completely comfortable with seeing explicit hygiene measurements taking place. So in that respect, I assume, and we'll speak to Nils shortly, that this is a good time for facilities such as his. But what about more holistic traditional spa environments? Your Thai resort, how are they going to adapt their offering, or do they even need to in response to this?
Well, absolutely, they have to adapt it, because their type of wellness was very much, touch and feel. And they don't want to ever change that experience, because that's defined them and it's made them who they are. We instantly think of properties like Bjurstam and Vana, where that whole healing process is done via the human touch. And they've just come up with other ways and other programs and enhancements that are going to make that experience as real and as potent as it always has been. So you will have, sound therapy, lots more meditation, outdoor, experiences on the wellness, etc. That will definitely come to the forefront. But I think we need to start with the touch points of the airports. And I think that's what we're all a bit fearful, You know, how are we going to get through Heathrow and through any of the airports? When we arrive, all the properties, without exception, have come up with really good ideas regarding the transfers, because that's very important. You get out of the car, you get out of the airport, you get into a car. Okay, what's my safety from here? So the cars have been vetted, sterilized. You've got perspex between the driver and the guest, and then you get there. Some spas are asking for certs on arrival to say that you don't have COVID. Some have the facility and the ability to do the test when you're there, which is fantastic. Some have their own clinics on site. So, sorry, their own labs on site. So Palace Murano, Clinic La Prairie, Villa Stephanie, Bad Ragaz, they can do a test and have the results within an hour. Others will get them, you know, to you within 4 hours. So
Francis,
at least that's there.
Sorry to interject. Will you have this as a new brand standard that you will expect the clients you work with in the future?
Yeah, I mean, everything, what our team are doing at the moment is going through every partner we're working with and establishing their COVID policy. We have a criteria, and we need to understand that everybody is matching or reaching or trying to fulfill that criteria. It's going to be so important now.
Yeah,
and we will have that, you know, we will have that information on every property on the website. It's just going to be as important as anything else now.
Thank you, Francis. But are your clients actually asking for this information, or are you preempting them? Do clients actually
You know,
care?
strangely, John, they're not. I think they expect us that we're going to deliver that information, so they don't ask us. You know, they're much more concerned with getting there. It's interesting, you know. We have a huge level of repeat clients who go back time and time again to the same spas or just to do the wellness journey with Healing Holidays. So they have their expectations of Healing Holidays and what we're going to deliver. So they would expect us to know and to ensure that all our spas had the highest of COVID policy in place. They would expect that from us.
Yeah, I was going to say as well, in connection to that, speaking as a consumer and the information I'm receiving now as a journalist, a lot of products and properties are emphasizing their new approach to cleanliness. Always a concern for me to see this emphasis when I'm dealing with luxury brands. I think, you know, there's the indication that they perhaps previously weren't as vigilant or scrupulous as I would have expected if I were paying £1,000 a night. So I just, you know, from my consumer perspective as well, want to add a caution about how people convey that message about what they're now doing in terms of your sanitary procedures. If you're suggesting that you weren't previously vigorous about this, it actually, in my mind, discredits the brand. And also, you know, if I go to a place, I'm ready to travel now and just have a nice time. So constantly framing everything within the prism of COVID isn't really conducive for me feeling like this is going to be a good holiday. Nils, I just want to speak to you about this as well, because Lanserhof has actually remained open throughout the entire period. So you've seen this trajectory in real time. What have you noticed with your customer base? What's changing?
I would say there was a lot of uncertainty in the beginning, so everybody was a little bit afraid. So we had a lot of cancellation in the mid of March, especially from the international guests for sure, but also from some German guests, because they were afraid to leave the house, and there were also some of them were really astonished that we still have open, that the property was still open. And it is because of the reason that we are a clinic. So normally we could have stayed open in Austria and in Germany. Unfortunately, in Austria, there were a lot of movement restrictions. So the only guests we could welcome then, I guess, from the village Lands, and the village Lands in total have, I don't know, probably 300, 400 inhabitants, so you can't run in Lanserhof with these 400 inhabitants. But nevertheless, we had in the weakest time, we still had an occupancy from almost 30%, which is not so bad. Then we really see that we had a lot of word of mouth recommendation from the guests which we had there, because they're saying at the end it's probably the best place in the world at the moment to stay while this pandemic breakout, because you are more or less in a safe environment, and in the case that you are getting ill, you have a lot of doctors here. So yeah, we've seen that we get a lot of new bookings in April. And now we are fully booked again, which is quite good for Bavaria. We are reopening next Monday next Sunday for Austria, and yeah,
so
we see.
In terms of capacity, the news is quite encouraging. But within that, what are the behaviours you're now noticing? I think you mentioned to me previously, you know, you're a focus now on preventative medicine. People looking for IV treatments, and something that people have repeatedly mentioned is immunity as a new buzzword in terms of how we package.
Yeah, this is the most the strongest effect we have seen in London, because in London we also still have open, and in London we are very much focused on sports medicine, and at the moment the most services we are selling are really consultation in terms of prevention, screenings in terms of prevention. So we have an MRI, for example, where the people are prefer to go instead of going to a hospital, because nobody wants to go to a hospital at the moment because they are afraid that you get an infection there. And so we have a lot of demands for MRI screening, for example. We also for prevention reasons, but also for other reasons. But in general, the doctor's consultation are very much, there's a huge demand of IV infusions, consultations, how to boost your immune system. And also mindfulness is one of these really very often requested things. So
I know actually a lot of the panel, I've spoken to everyone already, have strong feelings on that. You know, now as we pivot potentially from highly intensive touch treatments, looking for other ways to engage with people in a way that will be just as beneficial, but perhaps a little less physically intrusive for those who have concerns about it. I will ask you in a moment, Francis, but I want to get to Nigel as well. You're a trained masseur yourself as well. So I want to talk firstly about your perception about how massage will change, how we take care of therapists who might feel vulnerable in this environment as well. And then also, do you see this expansion where people move to more cerebral, less touch-focused treatments in future?
Yeah, and I do. I mean, I think the job of a therapist has always been to kind of, you know, manage their guest on some level. And now we just have to kind of pile anxiety on that as well. I mean, that's essentially what we're talking about here, is the management of everybody's anxiety, whether, as Francis said, it's, you know, the airports, you know, getting somewhere, and in fact, which has prevented me from traveling, I don't necessarily mind going there. It's whether or not I can get home. But yeah, absolutely. You know, there are, I'm very fortunate in the respect that I get, you know, with the projects that I have that haven't opened. So I have the opportunity to sit back and listen to the noise, whereas everybody else is having to respond in real time, you know, because the businesses are already up and running. Some of the things that I would, you know, just from the perspective of a therapist, you know, John, you and I talked a little bit about this, but you know, this is a unique experience for us. It's global pandemic, something uniquely that we're all going through together. And in that, you know, trying to implement things like, for example, an extended consultation time, not necessarily to exchange information, but to exchange experiences, because we've all gone through this crazy experience together. So in terms of, you know, there are these very physical activities that protect the therapists, you know, with the PPE, etc. But really what we're trying to do is manage people's anxiety here. And so I think, like, instigating these longer times when I, as a therapist, can share with my guests the experience of this pandemic. And, you know, this kind of, I feel like we're in this kind of beautiful breeding ground of commonality, you know, and commonality breeds humanity. And that is where I think the wellness industry, I feel like we're standing on this precipice, you know, of, you know, and whether or not we decide to kind of try to manipulate the old normal into post C19 language, or whether we kind of embrace whatever post C19 looks like and create a new way. What's important, I think, with therapists, consultants, and everyone really, is that we don't lose the language of wellness and replace it with the language of C19. Super important, because wellness is number one. the culture, the offering, everything is that, and it's profoundly important right now.
Yeah, I see you nodding in agreement, Francis. What are your thoughts?
Yes, I so agree with Nigel. I mean, the human touch, the interaction, all of these, we need it more now than ever. I think people are more anxious, not less. And also this time away from normal lives has made people perhaps take a step back and see, do I need to address the balance in my life? So a lot of people now are at a crossroads in their life, and they need sort of to be able to go to great healers, great places like Vana, like Ananda, just to get some mental clarity. And not being able to have interaction with therapists, I think would be just a tragedy of tragedies, It's so important that this remains.
Yeah, if I can just jump in on that, because it's 100% true. So there are two phases of this isolation, right? So there's a very physical isolation where I am isolated from the world. That's one thing. But then once we are able to get out and we can't hug our loved ones and our family, and that, so you've got the physical isolation, and then we kind of move into the emotional isolation. And it's the emotional isolation that we as industry people will be faced with. And there is intimacy in this industry, and this is what we have to try to navigate, to not lose the purpose, to not lose the intimacy, and replace it with necessary regulations. But there has to be a juxtaposition. There has to be a balance of the two. But my moving forward, my concern, just maybe with humanity, I don't know, outside of our industry, but my concern there is how we step up as a wellness industry. How do we step up and help people with this emotional isolation that they're feeling? And it is our responsibility to jump off the precipice, to figure out this new normal, whatever that is. But it's our responsibility.
That's one of the key questions now, isn't it? How do we figure out how to help people through this emotional trauma? And also, this is a conversation for people in the industry. So what are the commercial and economic opportunities there as well? How should people be pivoting their businesses to respond to, the global dialogue we're having now about mental and emotional well-being, beyond maybe the cursory understanding of wellness that preceded this, where people might just go for a nice massage? What services should be introduced? I know, for example, Francis mentioned that some of your clientele, you mentioned Crossroads earlier, are looking for expanded programs where they might do periods of months in treatment or something like that. And also I'm wondering, Lanserhof, the London facility.
Well, it is interesting, and I've definitely seen that in terms of the inquiries we're getting. So people now want to go for longer stays, because if you're going to make that journey, they want to make it a longer stay, which is perfectly logical and rational. But also, more importantly, because they have more time to focus on the issues that have raised their ugly head during COVID. And that's the thing. So, I know Camellia, Chivasum, absolutely, the holistic side of wellness are all coming up with programs for that longer stay. I see properties in Europe, Shaw have certainly introduced one as well, Euphoria, etc., because they realize people want to devote the time to getting themselves back on track.
And be prepared.
Some people have been seriously scarred by this,
Yes, Nils, what would you like to reflect there?
No, for me, it's not only getting back on track, it's also to be prepared to feel in a better condition. So we have made the experience that some of our guests are coming once or twice a year and just see it as a kind of, I don't know, paying some payback time for their health, but at the end they are living pretty unhealthy in between. And now we see that they are asking for consultation. How could I stay healthy also when I'm leaving this place?
Yeah.
Hi, Anna.
Hi, Anna. Can you hear us?
Sorry, I had it in my calendar that it was in 1 hour later. Sorry.
Okay. Well, I hope it looks like you're having a nice time out on the terrace. So this is conveying wellness quite nicely for everyone who's in drab and dreary London, for starters. Thank you. Just to reintroduce Anna to the rest of the attendees, and you're the wellness pioneer for Six Senses. Everyone else has already introduced themselves, so maybe you can just shortly give us an insight into what wellness pioneer actually is.
It's a good question. So my name is Anna, as you all know, and a wellness pioneer is, we've created this title because, and this position actually, to my job is to always look at what's happening in the wellness industry, how we can actually mold it into something that is usable for our guests, look at what's new, what's happening, and also come up with new concepts, new programs, new integrated wellness practices, etc. into, and right now, we obviously in this time and age, we are working really diligently on looking at new wellness programs and new ways of structuring our company in terms of wellness and sustainability.
Great. Unfortunately, you've missed some of the conversation, but one of the things we touched on very briefly, I shared a sad story about the absence of touch in my life. And I know when we spoke previously that you illustrated actually how fundamentally essential touch is, which is really at the core of the type of experience I perceive Six Senses is offering through its spa program. So can you tell us much about why people perhaps are so desperate to have massages and these tactile experiences once again? What does it mean for us biologically?
Well, I think many of you have heard of the study that was done on babies and looking at what happens with babies who do not get touched. And they did that, and simply you get sick and you're not survive. And we are a creature that needs touch. We are. So if we don't get it, we actually do have seen, and science have shown that lonely people are, it's not only that they're lonely, but they also are not touched. And you get all kinds of various effects of that. And a lot of it obviously is related to stress. And as soon as you are touched by someone, you actually feel less stress. And there's many other things, and the release of oxytocin and GABA and all kinds of other hormones that are good for us. So I was sharing to John that I had not been touched for, I think, about 2 weeks. And then I went and had a massage. I'm from Sweden, so we don't have the same rules and regulations. And I went from that massage and thought, I was wondering what he put in the massage oil, because I was feeling as I was high and I was flying out of there. And it was the most exhilarating feeling. I've never felt anything. It's such a natural high. And I realized, oh my God, I've not been touched. And I think many of our therapists and people who have worked with touching people know that the minute you touch someone, you often get a reaction. It could be crying, it can be laughter, it can be talking. It's so much things that happens. But touch are essential for us, and not having had touch means that we have a desire for touch, and people will have. And so often I hear right now, it's like, I wish I could just hug someone. And I think that's, we're going to see that for people who are not having an underlying risk factor, and also who are not in that afraid bucket, will probably be much prone to also book. And we see that in our locations today. We do have quite a few treatments, which in the few locations we do have open and booked, and people are queuing up.
Well, we've spoken a bit about the offerings at Lanserhof, for example, and Francis has a universal view of every product, and Nigel's obviously exposed to and engaged with so many different brands as well. I think Six Senses specifically, and I was really keen to have your input there, is somewhere as a brand, I as a consumer again would perceive as being, you know, the more traditional holistic spa experience where you have a very intimate relationship with the therapist. It's very tactile, and that kind of a cerebral approach as well. So how are you going to work within the confines and restrictions of COVID-19 that might place more impetus or emphasis on PPE, or are your therapists going to be gloved and masked? What am I going to encounter as a consumer now?
Well, I mean, we've put in a number of measures, and it's all depending on also what rules and regulation is in each country, but obviously hygiene factors, and we also have longer time between treatments. So we have, unfortunately, I would say, a fumigate gun, it's called, but basically between each treatment, you can go in and take away all virus and bacteria. We have the therapist change their uniform between every treatment. They, of course, wear masks.
Sorry, Anna, how does changing uniform work with Six Senses' approach to sustainability and single use and the like?
Well, it's simply is that we have to do a lot more washing, and that's not very sustainable, but we're doing our best. But we have usually every therapist have 3 to 4 uniform forms, and we just have to make sure that they're washed and that we're able to change them. And then all the sanitizing rules and everything that is there, but they don't have gloves when they do a massage, because that is difficult. And so far, but we've also built treatment rooms outdoor. So we have them outdoor instead of indoor. So there's other things that we've done. So basically we've done everything we can in terms of cleanliness and hygiene. And we also both take fever check and blood check with our therapist and staff every day.
So you see more treatments moving to an outdoor space, and I know a lot of people have mentioned that as well. Nigel, I want to speak to you about that because you're involved currently in the development of a fitness retreat in India called King's Mansion, and also work with a number of major brands to help define structurally their spa concepts. Yes. I know you've worked with the like of The Man and Four Seasons, Mandarin Oriental, very prestigious brands with the revenue available to actually implement significant changes. So I'm kind of keen to look at the future through your eyes now that you're dealing with clients who aren't tethered to an infrastructure that's already in place, that are developing new concepts. What might the spa of the future actually look like? What should people be implementing now to future-proof their offering?
Well, I mean, look, this is kind of the unique position that I'm in. So I'm the lead consultant development consultant on an Ayurvedic center in Goa, in India. And I suddenly find myself in the middle of this global pandemic with the luxury of time. So while everybody else is adjusting in real time to pre-existing businesses, as you said, I have the luxury to sit back, listen to the noise. You know, I say this a lot. You know, we're not defined by how we respond. We're defined by how we evolve, and so it's difficult for people in real time because everybody, you know, this double-barreled knee-jerk response, and I just have the luxury of time where I can sit back, listen to the noise, and we can, you know, this morning I was on meetings with the architects and the interior designers of King's Mansion, for example, and we're talking about adjusting from everything from adjusting the design on the floor tiles, as it were, to even of the restaurants, to even make the social distancing, give it the illusion that it's actually more intimate than it really is. But that's
specifically, we spoke about this before. I thought that was really interesting, just as these very subtle steps that people can make to respond to the reality that our social spaces are going to be changed. So you mentioned tiles. There's an optical illusion that makes the space seem.
But I mean, this is possible because I am in this unique position. I mean, we probably will be one of the first kind of residential wellness spaces that opens post C19. But it, you know, with King's Mansion, with the project of King's Mansion, the concept of King's Mansion is to marry. You know, we're working with the Genomics and Biology Institute in New Delhi, and we're doing lots of, actually we were until C19, and now those people have been really instrumental in finding, so they're kind of a bit busy right now. So we're gonna wait till it calms down and then we'll reestablish that. But King's Mansion is a kind of a beautiful juxtaposition of you know, historic Ayurvedic philosophies and medical practices, but we're matching it with contemporary evidence-based science and genomic research and those kind of things. So we do have a lot with Nils, for example, you know, and with Clinique La Prairie. You know, these kind of regulations are not going to look out of place in King's Mansion because it does have a contemporary kind of science approach to it. But I get to build C19 response into the DNA, into the bricks and mortar of King's Mansion, rather than it to feel kind of, you know, an outside alien kind of, you know, all thumbs kind of response to it. And so, you know, as you know, outside of King's Mansion, you know, even just as a consultant, you asked the question about massages earlier. You know, I hesitate to think about what the new massages will look like, because I think that I'm not a person who enjoys fads and trends at all. You know, I like what I like, and that has to be, you know, married and steeped and anchored in years of research. So I worry that there are going to be kind of new kind of faddish massages that, you know, promise immunity boosting or something like that. So I'm more kind of focused on what I hope that the spa of the future is not, than what I think it will be, because we're in such early days now that, you know, the conversation that we had at the beginning 2 months ago, the conversations and the webinars I was doing 2 months ago for Wellness Summit and things, the close conversations have completely changed, and the information has completely changed, and the responses have completely changed. So,
yeah. Well, I think as well, there's a real recognition that people are ready to start getting back out there again, as Francis is probably encountering with a lot of our clients at the moment, and Lanserhof being full. Kind of tied to what Nigel was saying, Nils, about spas of the future and those spaces, you're opening a property in Silt in 2021, I believe. So you also have an opportunity potentially to implement some changes now that will reflect different consumer habits. Is there anything you've done or will be doing?
Will be doing, yes. So I had a discussion just about this with our building team yesterday, and for sure we are taking in consideration what effects C19 had on our property so far, and we will also see what we can now change, because to be honest, the building itself is quite in a very developed situation already, so there's not so many walls you can move or something like that. But nevertheless, we are having still one building which hasn't been so much finalized yet, and now, and so we are trying to adapt some of these. This is, for example, also which is not so wellness driven, but the restaurant, for example, is also. You have to see that at the moment we are really expanded our restaurant at Tegernsee to the lobby area in a way, because it's not possible otherwise. Because normally some of our guests are really enjoying to be sitting on a table together with 4 other guests or 5 other guests as a maximum, so a table of 6. So it's not possible to have a table of 6 anymore, and so we have to readjust these things. Nevertheless, without an COVID-19 situation, we still want to have these tables again, because this is an experience. I don't know on which table you have sitting while you were there, but normally it's a place where a lot of new friendships are also starting, especially on these a little bit larger tables. And I experienced it by myself. When I was there as a guest, that I'm still one of these other guests I met there is still a very good friend of mine, and we are in an exchange. And so we have to be prepared for COVID-19, but we shouldn't lose everything which was nice and beneficial in the past. So yeah, we try to be prepared, but we are not changing it completely.
I enjoyed talking to my fellow guests at Lanserhof, because there was a shared sense of suffering that would allow.
Yes, I love
Definitely.
that.
And you know, we could just pretend we were having a terrible time, yet still want to go back year after year after year. But it's so good to have these things to galvanize us, isn't it? As we're seeing with this COVID conversation we're constantly having. Nils, in relation to the situation at Lanserhof more generally, and I want Francis and Anna's input into this as well. My perception before we started conversing is that, you know, this is a wonderful time commercially, potentially, for medispas facilities specifically. I would imagine a lot of people now with this new enhanced interest in their health will be willing to invest heavily in ensuring they can maintain it. And we spoke about preventative measures that you're implementing, the idea of immunity being a new buzzword. So conversely, as I mentioned, I'm concerned that for a lot of the traditional spas that are perceived as being more tactile, kind of floaty experiences, that they may suffer in comparison. Do you think, from your perspective, being anchored in medispa experiences, that places that might aspire to expand their offerings from the more traditional spa experiences to incorporate medispa elements, can they get away with that? Will that work? Would that convince me as a consumer?
So I've seen that some of the listeners also listened to my presentation I had on the Global Wellness Summit, and I think the title of my presentation is "You Can't Be Half Pregnant," and I'm still believing in this. Either you are focusing on medical services, or you are focusing on great spa experience in terms of pampering. So you can't offer both from my point of view, because you can't say on the one hand, yeah, now we are offering a nice detox program. On the other hand, you have this indulging menu, you're having the greatest wine cellar, but you don't have to use it. So it is something you can choose. So when you're on the detox program, you don't have to eat this tasty food, and you don't have to drink this gorgeous wine. It's just an offering in addition. So I don't think that this work, and our guests are enjoying that they are they are covered in a kind of, and I mean a positive bubble. They're protected in a bubble of health, and they're getting their food by prescription. Nobody's having coffee. Nobody, because there is no coffee. Nobody having any alcohol, because there is no alcohol. They're getting the food by prescription. So, and this is something which helps you, because you're seeing that not the guy on the other table having coffee, having a five-course menu and things like that.
I get the logic of that, but I do recall being at Six Senses in Vietnam, and I believe I undertook a little bit more of an ambitious health program that did incorporate aspects that I thought were more anchored in the medispas tradition, you know, as being kind of connected to things and had stats printed out and stuff like that. So is there an attempt, or, you know, are there already procedures in place where some of your clients do get to have things that we might perceive as being medispas-like, or do you see you're going to expand into that field?
I think, I mean, I hear what Nils is saying, and I actually agree with that. When you are at Lanserhof, which is an amazing place, I've been there myself, it's like, it's very strict. It's very, very kind of sincere and serious. And when you look at Six Senses, what we have, and I wouldn't say that the analogy of half pregnant is always the one that I agree with, because what we also see gives huge improvement is that you take micro steps. So a lot of our programs is to teach our guests about, if you are on a sleep program, and we have a set menu and everything for you. Of course, on a sleep program, we do sleep assessment, biomarker assessment, and all those things that are in this field. But if you want to have a steak for dinner, for instance, we say, by all means, go ahead, but we do a sleep measurement, and you see what effect that has on your sleep quality during the night, and we can compare it. So for us, what we see is that when we see those micro steps of improvement with our guest, instead of, and it's depending, I think it's dependent on who you are and what type of guest you are, but when you see that you can take 3 things with you, instead of doing that whole boot camp complete overhaul, which I personally love to do, but not everyone is in for that. And instead want to do a program that is serious, but you're also, and we also see that can give even longer lasting improvements. But also we have couples that come to us where one want to do a serious yoga retreat or a detox, and the other one wants to go diving. And that works also really well. So I think for us, we have the ability to do both. And of course, going on a serious detox and seeing someone drinking wine is nothing that really works that well. And I wouldn't advocate it, but we've kind of made it into our own way and do a bit of milder programs. But we do have guests that goes the whole 9 yards. We even have people who choose Six Senses instead of other destination spas, which we have found interesting. But for us, we have a different approach to it. And especially that when it comes to micro step of improvement, learning, understanding what your strengths and weaknesses are as a person, and also what you need to do it. And then we also try to follow up when they leave so they can do it at home.
And I think we are not so far away from each other in terms of what we are thinking. And at the end, a stay at Six Senses resort is always beneficial for your health already. So if you compare to, I don't know, staying at a regular Kempinski or I don't know, one and only hotel, I would say that the step going to a Six Senses hotel is different, because you are already going in the right direction in terms of what means right direction. You're always already doing a lot of things which are beneficial for your health. And at the end, I must always say, when you learn something about your body, you understand more what is beneficial for your body, what is good. Like you mentioned with the sleep, I'm wearing this Aura ring now for almost a year. So and I love it. I love it because I learn every day something new about my health, and I see, and different to everyone else who started to drink more alcohol during the COVID-19 time. I'm really stopped to drink alcohol. So I had more alcohol on my hands than I've drunk during these times. And then it was a birthday for my wife, and then we had some champagne. And I really have seen, like in this night, like my readiness was really falling so much down. I'm normally falling on from 100 points, always between 80 and 90 points, and then I wake up and the next morning I had only 40. So just because I had some champagne. So, and you see what effects things like that having on your body. And this is what I totally agree. When you're going to a six senses resort, you learn something about your body. You also learn something about, when you go to Lanserhof in a more strict way, but still you are investing into your health. And when you see what is good for your body, it's always good, because you're then better prepared for the future.
I would just interject to say that, you know, regarding champagne consumption, you see the negative effect the day after, but it's worth it the night before, isn't it? So
definitely,
you know,
I'm not stopping to drink alcohol, so don't get me wrong, but I'm normally always drinking alcohol with other friends, and due to the fact that there are not so many friends at my home, because we all had this social distancing, I didn't have so much
I've been eating and drinking more rubbish than ever over the last 3 months, and you know, it's kind of got me through a lot of tough times. You know, we're speaking as well, Francis, about you know, can conventional spas adopt medispa conventions or behaviors? But I know you also have examples of spas that are incorporating new bespoke tailored treatments that are very individual, such as Aman wellness journeys. You think that might be a new trend that's emerging?
Yeah, well, I mean, Aman, you know, they offer such a private experience. So you can really go there, have your own villa, and have the ultimate sort of privacy. And Aman have always been fantastic with their immersion journeys. I mean, they are just amazing. The people they bring in, the practitioners, are as good as it's possible anywhere in the world. So like Aman Zoe, Aman Puri, Aman Oy, for example, those three particularly, you know, they're doing amazing spa journeys, and you can say to them the journey you want to take. And getting back to your point about sort of people, you know, you can't have wine or you can't whatever when you go to spa, I think you've got to define your journey before you go. I mean, what is prompting you to go? If I was going to Lanserhof, which I think is an amazing place, and you must never get rid of those large tables, Nils, I had the best laugh there with some amazing people. But you know why you're going to Lanserhof or any of these medispas. You are really going to sort your medical side out of your body. So a good diagnostic, sort out your gut, whatever that is. But your motivation to going maybe to Vana or Chivasam is going to be different altogether. You know, Vana, you're going there to sort of maybe get some mental healing and emotional healing. So there is the purpose of wellness and your purpose, your journey. So that's the thing, isn't it?
I guess clarity as well about what the product or the property actually offers. They need to be very clear in their branding at the moment so that we can respond to it appropriately. I just want to point out that we will very shortly take some questions, so you're all invited to enter them through the Q&A form below. One that I did just glance briefly was someone asking about anxiety among staff themselves. I know Francis also has emphasized to me privately the importance of specific therapists. You know, they can make or break a resort. You know, Nigel, as we were saying, a trained masseur yourself and heavily anchored in that aspect of it. What can properties do? I know people are representing various brands now to ensure, in light of all these health concerns we're having, the constant tests they'll be exposed to, the considerations they might have of a guest coming in from a rural airport in India, and how it might impact their own health and well-being. What can we do to take care of staff and ensure that they're happy in the environment and stay in place?
Oh, communication. It's, you know, there's, you know, if we're talking for, you know, for residential program properties like Six Senses and Lanserhof, certainly, there's a great opportunity for pre-arrival communication and having all of those things put in place, certainly. The thing, and actually throughout these webinars, it's interesting because we're all kind of, it's all been kind of very guest focused. You know, how do we treat the guest? What does the guest? And we do forget that with the evolution of wellness, the only thing, you know, that it's the people who deliver it are the people who are kind of, you know, fundamentally on the front lines of this. And I think anxiety, well, I know anxiety is a different thing to different people. but the one thing I think that can blanket this is the communication, the pre-arrival testing. It really, there just has to be a way. There has to be a way for it to create it within the DNA of the vision of the property. Speaking on behalf of therapists, I would imagine that there would be an emphasis on that, or on communicating with the guest, on spending the time before the massage to connect with the guest. It's the therapists have to be taken care of. It's because without therapists, wellness is just really a word, and it's important. So I would imagine, what I love about this horrible situation is that we are now kind of entering this kind of open source situation where we are all sharing our ideas and all sharing our experiences with each other as an industry. And I think it's created a much more solid community within the wellness industry. I think if therapists understand that they are the focus, managing their anxiety is the focus. I mean, they also have to relax. I mean, Francis has mentioned sound therapy, and we can talk about Reiki and all these things, but if those specific kind of very vibrational experiences are delivered by somebody who is not comfortable with the person they're delivering it to, then we lose the point. It's communication. Communication is key. Finding out from your therapist what it is that they're afraid of and addressing that.
We've all spoken as well privately about the need for a clear, straightforward testing procedure. So frequent tests for staff so they're aware of their own health status, and also implementing strategies so that people, before they arrive at the resort, we're aware of how healthy they are or not as well, or if there's an infection risk. So I presume that's going to become another industry norm. As we're running out of time, I wanted to just quickly address something. A lot of you have spoken about the expansion of resorts, spa resorts, to incorporate more outdoor facilities. That's not always possible in an urban environment. So what are city hotels and city spas going to do about that? I know Six Senses is opening in New York shortly, for example. Also, the hotel gym, is it dead? Is anyone going to want to use it anymore? So I'd just like to throw those open to whoever would like to address them. Maybe we'll start with Anna, because you've got the urban properties opening up.
Yeah, and we do have a couple of urban properties. No, I don't think so. We're in I would say temporarily, yes. There is various aspects you can take when you can't go outdoor when it comes to gym. And there's always possibilities, and taking guests outdoor for walks and other things, regardless, and parks nearby. But otherwise, you have to do a certain number of guests during a certain time to actually book the gym, is what's happening in some locations. So that's a possibility. When it comes to treatments, you can also make actual hotel rooms to be treatment rooms for those type of guests that would like that rather, and then they really have this experience. So there's other ways of doing it. I do not see, and if I look at it also in a perspective of here in Sweden, where gyms, etc., has been kept open, there was very few people in the midst of the pandemic in Sweden in any gym, and now they're packed and just like normal again. And I think people just kind of, after a while, when you come into a different phase of this and accept the situation, those people, and I speak with a lot of people who will never maybe potentially not go to the gym in the next couple of years. And that is fine. And they find other ways, and you can work out, and also in-room workout and all those things that you just have to work with. But I think the main thing is look at who is the actual guest and what do they want. And when we've spoken to travel agents and our guests and people around the world, and we've done a lot of research on that lately, everyone is agreeing that those people who are very afraid, they will not travel, because the worst thing is not going into a hotel. Probably the worst thing is getting actually to an airport and on a plane. And the planes now in Europe, I've had many friends who's gone on planes in Europe, they're packed. There's no seats in the middle free or anything like that. They're super, super packed in a lot of planes. So that is the first step. So if you go on a plane, you probably also can go into the gym or into a hotel. But for those that are afraid, they will simply not do that, or take road trips or do something else. So there is lots of opportunities, but we do see that there also, and we see this in China and Vietnam and other locations, is that what we said is called revenge spending. And people want to spend more, they want to do more, they want to eat more, they want to be out more, and they have a desire to connect. So I think for those people, and that's a big mess, this will kind of be a phase, And then we will come not to what we were before, but a new normal, which is different. It's kind of like what we've seen with after 9/11, that suddenly we had airport checks all around the world in every way, no liquids. And that's the new normal. We're going to have things happening in our industry as well. But the question is it's such a moving target, and it changes every day what hygiene measures one should do and not do.
Yeah. You know, the new normal is a term that we're all using to try and just navigate our way through what actually is happening at the moment. But I just see in relation to what you said, a question from Lauren Ho, Travel Ed at Wallpaper, as she mentions. Thank you, Lauren. I'm wondering, you know, we're in the midst of this pandemic. We're discussing it all the time now, but humans, I think, are predictable and lazy. Are we just going to revert back in 18 months to what we previously did? Or are these really seismic changes that will be permanent alterations to how the wellness industry is structured? What do you reckon, Frances?
I think it's an interesting question. You know, I still think we will revert back because we're very passionate about the type of wellness we've enjoyed over the last few years, and we don't really want that to change. So I think we'll put up with what we need to put up with for as long as we have to, but nothing will ever take away from that human contact that we so strongly desire and need. I mean, we just need it. So it depends what you mean by reverting or changing. It really does depend what that means. We're, you know, as Anna rightly said, we put up with whatever we need to get through airports now. I mean, 100 millilitres, who'd have thought we would have tolerated that every time we went through an airport, but we do. But I think, you know, spa is very different, and the whole wellness experience is something very special, and it can't be hugely altered. And I know a lot of spas that I've spoken to over the last few weeks and months are very concerned that their journey will be perceived as being very different, and they don't want that. They're very proud of what they are and who they are. That is their mission, their DNA, and they don't want to change it. So as soon as it is possible to have that full body massage, and you know, whether that's 4-handed or 6-handed or 8-handed, people will want it. It's just a matter of when it's going to be safe to do so.
In connection to the reputation already established by so many of the brands you work with, I just see a question from Michelle Ryan, who I know works at Ashford Castle, which is one of my favorite hotels in the world and has a brilliant spa. And she's asking, what, you know, with customers changing perceptions now and demands, how do you think different spas should introduce themselves to clienteles these days? What are guests actually looking for? What do they want to hear in terms of branding, communication, to ensure that people still get the message about what they offer?
Well, I think if they're sending, you know, newsletters or mails or promotion, whatever, I think they have to communicate what they're doing to be responsible during this whole COVID. You know, that's very important. As I said, it's important for the property, the spa, to communicate that. They should not have to ask for that. And I think once they get that bit of reassurance, that will greatly help them on their way back to gorgeous Ashford Castle, for example.
Yeah. I would say in terms of that reassurance, once I've had it in prior communication, once I arrive, I don't feel like I personally need it that much. I don't want to constantly be hearing about COVID-19, but I'm trying to have a nice...
But you're happy to get it before you go.
I think, you know, on the basis that I've already checked in and I've arrived, you can assume that I feel safe being there. So, you know, maybe you want to give some cursory indications what you're doing, but, you know, I don't want every day to see our COVID-19 policy is blah, 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 blah. Time has flown by. I really appreciate everyone participating. I have one more question for everyone before we go. I just want to say to the audience as a whole, I'll be making a contribution to Hospitality Action in response to your attendance. It's a charity to help workers who've suffered a lot during the current pandemic. So thank you for your support with that. I welcome feedback or suggestions you might have for future webinars or people you want to put forward. My email address personally, rather than my work one for Lute, is john@joc.fyi. And I hope people have found it useful. This is meant to provide practical information that will benefit your businesses. That's one of the intentions. Finally, as well, in response to people dealing with all types of distress at the moment, and we're lucky enough to have brilliant health experts and wellness experts here surrounding us. I was going to suggest we started the hour with some breathing exercises or something, but we've got too much to cover. However, I do want to conclude it by just asking you all individually, the panelists, maybe you can give us advice relating to your own background and specialism about things we can do over the coming weeks just to take care of ourselves as well, to ensure our own wellness prospers and thrives during this challenging, unprecedented time. So Nils, have you got any advice for us?
So honestly, I have started again very consequent to do my intermittent fasting, and I found it very beneficial because I have seen in the home office when you're sitting in the kitchen the whole time that I was always hungry because I'm used to eat in the kitchen and not work in the kitchen, and now I'm stopped this and being back on intermittent fasting, and I see that I'm gaining so much power again by not eating anything, and I just can recommend it for everybody. You're feeling better, you're feeling stronger, and you're getting better through this time.
Thank you. I'm just laughing at you saying that because I'm working in my kitchen as well. I've established just that shot over there like a dessert pantry cupboard counter, and it's just, I can see a lot of apple tarts, biscuits, cookies, chocolate. So I'm going to try and take that advice. Thank you, Nils. Francis, yourself, what do you reckon?
I would say try and get some headspace for yourself each day. Start meditation. There's amazing information on, Instagram accounts with Vana, with Ananda, Kamalaya, Chivasam, all these wonderful properties with guided meditation. 10 minutes, it doesn't matter if you can't keep your mind clear or relaxed. As I said, just go with it. Let yourself go. I think that's the best thing you can do for yourself is to give yourself the ability to take yourself away to your own little place for 10 minutes a day.
Thank you, Francis. Yourself, Nigel?
Well, I practice transcendental meditation and have done for 10 years. I do that twice a day. But
wow.
Yeah, only 20 minutes, so it's not so great. That's why I never get anything done. No, listen, look, I mean, I'm a big meditator. I struggle sometimes with anxiety, and God knows this environment has created more of that. But I'm a meditator and I'm an isolation tanker. I mean, that's how I generally kind of manage my own kind of race that I have in my head. What I've started to do since lockdown is shower in the dark. And it gives me such a beautiful, everyone's not going to do it, but you're shutting off a sense, some of your senses, and it is meditative and isolating, and it puts you in a much more kind of serene space. But yeah, my big tip for home wellness is take a shower in the dark.
Wow.
Dark. Yeah.
Not even what about a cold shower?
Well, maybe the morning after, maybe morning after some of the alcohol that Nils hasn't drunk. but just no candles, nothing. Just take out all the senses. Get under a nice warm shower, but turn the lights out.
Wow.
Very good.
I want that yourself.
Nice. Have to try it.
Yes,
I just have to see. I have to find a way to cover my window, but
just don't kill yourself getting out of it, of course. But.
Yeah, we can't take responsibility for other people's health and issues. Nigel's advice. Do at your own risk. And just to conclude, our final comment for the session.
Yeah, I have to agree with the others. Intermittent fasting and meditation is part of my daily routine. I actually just, when I feel a bit too much in my head, I actually stand on my head against a wall or freestanding. So that is really nice to do because it really helps and it's good for a lot of things.